House will come to order. For that order of business, the third reading and final passage, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I move the consent list consisting of the following bills: Senate File 15, 28, and 157.
Would anyone like any of the bills removed from the consent list? Okay, will the reading clerk read the bills on consent list?
Senate File 15, sponsored by corporations, temporary licensing and permitting authority 2, an act relating to professions and occupations being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 28, sponsored by corporations, motor vehicles, security interest perfection, an act relating to motor vehicles being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 157, sponsored by Senator Beitman, property rights limitation on local authority, an act relating to cities and towns being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the House? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Roll call on the consent list. Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
Aye.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
Aye.
Gray. Greer.
Aye.
Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Heiner. Henderson.
Represent.
Heiner, aye. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman excused. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Sweeney. Walters.
Aye.
Washit. Western. Wharf. Wharf.
Here. Right, sorry.
Williams. Wilson.
Okay.
Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Brown. Sweeney.
Excused.
Excused. We have 58 aye, 2 are excused. As for Senate File 15, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote? Vote is-
Representative Sweeney, do you wish to vote on Senate File
Excused
15?
to aye. Sweeney, excused to aye. Further changes? Closing vote? The vote is closed. 59 aye, 1 excused. As for Senate File 28, are there any changes? Sweeney, excused to aye. Fortner, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 58 aye, 1 no, 1 excused. Now, as for Senate File 157, are there any changes? Baker, aye to no. Crago, aye to no. Banks, aye to no. Jennings, aye to no. Schwartz, aye to no. Sweeney, excused to no. Air, aye to no. Clifford, I to know. Obermuller, I to know. O'Hearn, I to know. Provenza, I to know. McGuire, I to know. Henderson, I to know. Zawanitzer, I to know. Connolly, I to know. Yin, I to know. Sherwood, I to know. Mr. Speaker, I to know. Summers, I to know. Roscoe, I to know. Further changes? Jennings, no to I. No to I. Further changes? Harshman, I to know.
Co-sponsor. I'm good.
Further changes? Closing vote? The vote is closed. 39 aye, 20 no, 1 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House Senate files number 15, 28, 157 to pass the House. Next order of business. We are at that order of business. The bill's on third reading, final passage, and the first bill. Okay, just a moment, folks. What do you got? All right, so we have an appointment of a conference committee for Senate File 75. Okay, and you need to point this, okay? All right, so Mr. Speaker has appointed Madam Minority Floor Leader Conley as chair, Representative Burkhart, Representative Oakley. So as one of the freshmen presented a new gavel here, I wonder where this came from. Representative Andrew, you want the privilege of the floor? That was a perfect time.
Privilege of the floor, Mr. Chairman.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce two of my constituents up in the North Gallery, Jesse and Joe Rubino, both of whom are about to graduate from the Wyoming College of Law.
Well, welcome to the House and congratulations on a wonderful endeavor. I just love lawyers. Okay. We're at that order of business. The bill's on third reading and final passage. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 34. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 34, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz. Born Alive Infant Means of Care, an act relating to public health and safety, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
There is an amendment. Madam Minority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 34, and I will withdraw it at the appropriate time. Friends, I'd like to call this an old friend, but I can't. It really isn't. We have heard it before, and it has come back. So one of the questions that we like to ask in this body is, what's the problem that we're addressing, and is this the solution? And I'd like to draw your attention to what our statutes currently say, 35-6-104. And what this bill is a modification. But right now, our statute says, the commonly accepted means of care shall be employed in the treatment of any viable infant aborted alive with any chance of survival. Right? That's the entirety of 35-6-104. If there is a perception of a problem, about what happens when a child who's aborted is born alive, our statutes already address it. So what this bill does is it adds in a clause and then a sentence. The clause that it adds in is after the commonly accepted means of care, it adds in that would be rendered to any other infant born alive. Right? That's what it adds in. And then it says that any physician performing an abortion shall take medically appropriate and reasonable steps to preserve the life and health of an infant born alive. Honestly, that sentence is redundant, right? I think we can all agree on that. But the part of this bill, what it does is add that clause that would be rendered to any other infant born alive. And that's where I have the biggest problem, is with that clause and what that clause means. And so I'm going to tell you about when these abortions happen, and then a personal story. These abortions happen, right, late into a pregnancy. We're not talking about weeks or even a first trimester if we're going down that road. We're talking about far enough down the road that there's even the possibility of a fetus being born alive. That happens in rare occurrences, less than 5%. Honestly, I believe it's less than 2% of all abortions happen at this time. It is when it is clear that there is an absolute medical necessity. It is a horrific time for the mother, for that family. It is a horrific time. And they make that decision that it needs to happen. So what do you, these don't take place in a doctor's office. They pretty much take place in a full surgical unit or a hospital, right? The same way for most of us giving birth. So keep that in mind. That's when these abortions happen. And I want you to think about that additional clause about commonly accepted means of care that would be rendered to any other infant born alive. And now the personal story. 34 and a half years ago, I gave birth. As many of you can imagine, this was an incredibly planned pregnancy, an incredibly wanted child. And I had a very difficult birth. Very difficult. And as many of you know, as soon as a child is born, it's given what's called an APGAR score, with the 0 being dead and 10 being perfectly alive. All right, 0 to 10. My son was born with an APGAR of 1. 1. A half a, one step from dead. And you know what happened then? That baby boy was whisked away from me and given everything needed. So now he is a happy, healthy 34-year-old man, right? Of course, I wanted that to happen. That a baby, a fetus who survives an abortion is likely to be born with an APGAR of 1. And the same thing that happened to my baby boy would happen in that case. As opposed to what that mother, what that baby's father or partner would want, which is to have that baby put on that mother's chest so he or she could die in the loving arms of their parent, not whisked away, not intubated, not having CPR and likely dying, but put on that mother's chest. But that can't happen with this bill because of that clause. That would be rendered to any other infant born alive, to my boy, right? Let mothers Let that family grieve the loss of the hardest decision I can imagine that they had made in their life. So on and against this bill.
Any members for the first time? Any members for the first time? Chairwoman Flitner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with all due respect and admiration for the good minority floor leader, I appreciate your thoughts, but I respectfully disagree, and I would urge no on the amendment and aye on the bill.
Any other members for the first time? Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm for the amendment against the bill. And with all due respect for the bringer, this bill is better than we saw last session. But I agree with the minority floor leader. Is this necessary? And I don't think it is. It's already covered under current statute. And it's well-defined within current. And I know our minds are already made up. And I know this bill will pass. And I believe, I shouldn't talk for the chief executive because I don't know what he'll do, but I know last time he did veto this bill. And I think it's better clarified this time. So my guess is he may look at it differently. But is it necessary? No. But to the point that I'd like to bring to you is, to my count, I believe that we've had 8 different variations this session alone on this topic. And how many of these bills do we need to debate each and every session before, in somebody's mind, somebody's eyes, we get it right? I think we've clarified. I don't even think it's a situation, frankly, in Wyoming. We've already forced, my belief is, we've forced these decisions into other states. And you've already made your point. So how much time do we need to spend year after year on these very difficult decisions? And we're also hearing a lot of bills brought up on other factors year after year after year. And how much is enough? And so with that, the only thing that I'd say is I'm for the amendment and against the bill, and respectfully to the bringer, I appreciate what you've done very much. So.
Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ninth time is a charm. God's will be done. If the baby was born alive, and like the good minority cheerleader mentioned, everything is possible. Bringing it from a 1 to a 10. I am against the amendment and for the bill.
Any other members for the first time? First time? Any members for their second time? Second time before the sponsor? Madam Minority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I withdraw third reading amendment, and I would ask you to vote no.
Thank you. The amendment's been withdrawn. Senate File 34, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
Aye.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
He's getting there.
No.
Gray. Greer.
Aye.
Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman excused. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Repeat, please. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters.
Aye.
Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes?
Fortner.
Fortner, no to aye. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 48 aye, 11 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 34, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 34 has passed the House. Go ahead, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Privilege of the floor.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. So it's education is being discussed down here, and there happens to be someone from my community, actually went to a few years younger than me in school, but Mr. Brent Daly is a educator from Campbell County. Go up and stand up, Mr. Daly. And longtime educator from Campbell County, native born. Native, multi-generation ranching from a ranching family, Wright Dailies, all that country up there was part of quite an empire that family is a part of. So anyway, so glad you're here. Thanks, Mr. Daly.
Welcome to the House. Okay. The next bill for our consideration, Senate File 85. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 85, sponsored by Senator Ellis. Property tax reporting and exemption. An act relating to property taxation being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
There are amendments. Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 85. I'm coming at this from a different direction now. We all said that we should have an exemption out there of $2,400 in the bill, and that seemed to have stuck. I'm just saying, why don't we just make it 10,000? And so that's pretty much what the bill is. I did delete de minimis, and the reason for that was at $2,400 property that you own that you have to report, it's like $15. And if you go at 10,000, it's around $60. So let's, and I have some numbers from my county. At $15 that you would owe, there was 309 accounts that would not have to report. I don't have the numbers for $60, but for 100, it was 966 businesses that would not have to report. So that, I would guess it's in the middle of that, around 600 businesses that wouldn't have to report now. At $15, the taxes that the county would not get was like 0.1%. I'm guessing around with the $60 tax, businesses don't have to pay the $60. It'll probably be about 1% of what the county gets in personal property tax. So let's decrease the number of businesses that have to report, because I think that was kind of what we decided. Let's increase that, and let's decrease the county assessor's workload. That was also discussed during this bill. So on the amendment, and I ask for your vote.
Any members for the first time? Any members for first time? Second time? Second time before the sponsor? Sponsor wish, okay? We're then voting on third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 85. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The amendment has failed. Division being called. All those in favor, please stand. Okay, all those opposed, please stand. Few more than 15. Amendment has failed. So Representative Larson, I'm wherever he went, I'm the Speaker Pro Tem. I'm much nicer and much taller and much more handsome than the majority floor leader. All right, next item. Go ahead, Chairman Harshman.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Yeah, we're getting amendments in, Mr. Speaker. Yeah,
Mr.
Second amendment.
Speaker Pro Tem, I would like to move third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 85. And just a little personal privilege on your last comment regarding the majority floor leader. I don't know about that. But anyway. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. We're on a roll now. Now, members, appreciate, this is a good bill. I like this bill, but there's a couple little things I think need improved on it. First of all, none of this stays static. And so if you get this exemption, you drop off. And the only time you'd ever come back on again is if the assessor notices something, and they're looking all the time at businesses and business advertisements and all that. And so you drop off. And then the other part of this problem is the disparate, how this is enforced from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, county to county. And some taxpayers might only owe $2 in one district and might owe 2 million in another district. And so there's some issues with that. And then so that part needs, I think, a little cleanup. The other part of this, it gets rid of this criminal penalty, which I think is good, but it puts this $5 a day, which I don't think is necessary. And when you talk to all these assessors, they don't want it. I mean, some are gonna do it, some aren't. When you do it, and so really, I bring this bill just from the feedback and what we've learned. I like the idea of this de minimis exemption piece, but I think we still want to have folks report to us and know what's going on. So, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, what this amendment does, you can see on line 27 of the amendment, it moves the exemption from 2,400 to 3,000. And so that's about $19 of tax a year. But what it does in it, instead of giving this exemption, it says, if you want to claim this de minimis amount, you simply you'll fill out just a little affidavit, you'll sign saying, I got less than 3,000 of business personal property, and here's my $20 little fee. And it'll be distributed just like everything else. If you don't want to do that and you only owe 50 cents, fill it out and report it and pay your 50 cents. But I think for a lot of people, it'll be easier just to hey, I owe $10, $15, whatever. I'm just gonna fill this out and make it a simple form. Pay my $20. It'll be distributed. There's not much revenue in any of this anyway. But then we're gonna get rid of this penalty piece as well. But we don't lose track of businesses out there because none of it stays static. And that's, I think, the thing that this bill is granting an exemption. I think we got to be careful. Things change. So welcome to discussion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Chairwoman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question because I was, trying to read all the paragraph there. Do I have to pay this $20 every year or is it a one-time? Because it does seem kind of silly to pay a $20 fee to declare that I'm exempt from paying $9 of tax. I mean, that would be an interesting method of collecting more revenue, but just to be clear, a one-time fee or every year fee?
Chairman Swanser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my concern is it's under this amendment, it's no longer taxation, it's paying a fee, right? We have statutes on taxation to be equitable and you pay your share. And so if the bringer of the amendment could just kind of address that, I think the 3,000 is fine. But I have issues with it. It's not personal property tax anymore. It's instead of paying tax, you just pay a fee to not actually have to pay your taxes, which seems to be a dangerous road to go down. When we talk about, the ways we tax in the state.
Any other members for the first time? Any other members first time? Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment. I listened, recalling testimony in committee from the assessors and particularly the one from my county. This involves up to 6 people over time and 1,000 accounts. And I think what we offer here have a chance to consider is a fairly straightforward application and a nominal fee. But more importantly, this helps you stay on the rolls, so you don't have to, take that risk, and then you don't have to spend all that time. We had a sample of material in the committee where it was like multiple pages, many pages, and it boiled down to about it was $321. Boiled down, it resulted in a very small tax, and so I think the de minimis part of this is important to keep in mind, and this will help fix that. And then the other thing is it takes it and it frees up the assessors to look at those accounts, those potential accounts where there are larger taxes due in the various counties that maybe go, they don't get the attention maybe they could get because the assessors are involved with these smaller accounts, looking at many pages of small amounts added up to very small tax. So on and forth.
Any other members for the first time? Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. So I guess I have a couple of questions. The first question, while the amendment may say how it's to be distributed, is that actually how fees are distributed? Because if I recall, we had a bill not long ago where we had this discussion about certain fines and fees go to education, 100%. So I just want to understand if that, even though the amendment may say how it's supposed to be directed, is actually in fact consistent with our understanding. The second thing I guess my query is we heard in the de minimis discussion, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, that other states have had this de minimis thing. This is something that's this is a well-worn road, if you will. Other folks have done it. Have other folks done the opposite? Because this would be a maximus fee if you had very little personal property. This would be a maximus fee, not a de minimis fee if I had very small amount of property. So I actually have multiple companies with multiple personal property tax rolls. Now I can split actually my personal property up between those 3 companies because it gets shared around between the 3 companies. And I could be paying $60 instead of maybe quite a bit more potentially, depending on where the amount gets set. That's why the $10,000 was interesting to me. Um, But, and being this de minimis. So I guess that's my question is equitable taxation would require a rate. I get de minimis. But if I've got $100 and now I'm being required to pay on a $3,000 assessment fee, does that make sense? So I'm thinking about it the opposite way. When you have multiple companies that may have multiple small amounts of resources or one with a lot, then I spread it out over 3 others. And then where does the fee actually, I know where it says it goes, but where can it actually go? Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Any other members for the first time? Any members for the Representative Yin?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the conversation that we had about fees and where they could go on a previous bill was actually talking about fines and penalties. So in the Constitution, fines and penalties must go to the public school fund. But this is a fee to avoid a filing cost. So it actually isn't a fine and penalty. So I do believe we can assign it wherever we want, like in the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Any other members for the first time? Any members for a second time? Second time before the sponsor? Chairman Harshman. Oh, wait a sec, Mr. Speaker.
So thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. And I do appreciate the penalties fines thing, but I still question whether you can, whether even though it's a fee, whether we can distribute it the same way as something that is not connected to the actual value. That's my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other members for the second time? Okay, back to the sponsor, Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. On the fee issue, I think the representative from Teton County answered it. Fees are civil and we can decide where we want to put those. And it says in the bill how they'll be distributed and where fines and penalties go to schools. As far as the equitable piece and moving, as a good speaker talked about, I think that's an issue already. And you can do that right now. And I think the problem we're trying to solve are these little small accounts. And it takes more time out of the assessor's office than what it's worth. Okay, so create another exemption in the tax code. That's the proposal. I think we got too many exemptions in the tax code. And so, but I understand the problem. So instead of saying, well, we're going to run the assessor through the whole process and you got to file this for a de minimis amount, just pay a fee and swear that you have that de minimis amount. And then you're still part of the community and the tax roll and the whole thing. It's not this exemption, because then when does the exemption come off? Well, it's to the taxpayer themselves will say, hey, I'm at currently 2,400, I'm at 2,500 now, so I got to file. Or for the assessor to see their ad or they walk by or whatever it might be. So trying to solve the problem, but I think you could create some problems too by just wiping out and creating an exemption for a large number of people. And so let's just make it really simple. And so that's what the bill, and then to get rid of this penalty. It doesn't need to be a penalty. It's never enforced. Nobody wants to enforce it. And I think that's part of that. So thank you for your debate and your consideration. Please vote aye on the amendment. I think it improves the bill and I think it'll be business friendly and improve the process and not add another exemption to the many, many exemptions we already have in our tax code. So thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
We are voting on third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 85. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. That amendment has failed. Division being called. All those in favor, please stand. I vote aye, 20. Okay. All those opposed? 35. Okay. Yeah, the divisions failed, 20 to 35. Senate File 85 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
Aye.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
No.
Gray. Greer.
No.
Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman excused. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters.
No.
Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Provenza, aye to no. Further changes? Sherwood, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 35 aye, 24 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 87, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 85. Yes, thank you. I did say something, sorry. Let me try again. Senate File 85, having been read 3 separate times, excuse me. You know what, Mr. Speaker, reading the script isn't as easy as it seems. Yes. Senate File 85, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 85 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 118. There are amendments. Chairman Nicholas,
I have to read it in, sir.
the reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 118, sponsored by Appropriations, Federal Emergency COVID-19 Relief Funding, an act relating to emergency expenses of government being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
There are amendments. Representative Nicholas, Chairman Nicholas.
I would respectfully withdraw the amendment.
Okay. First amendment has been withdrawn. The second amendment to Senate File 118, Representative Gray.
Mr. Speaker Pro Temp, thank you. I move third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 118 and ask for favorable consideration. So what this amendment would do is it would take out the waiver from competitive bidding and procurement requirements in statute that is currently in the bill. And I'm just not sure. I don't understand why we need this waiver of the competitive bidding requirements in the rental assistance program. And I really can't get a straight answer on it. I mean, I'm not sure that those payments are subject to it in the first place. So what exactly are we waiving and why on earth are we doing it? And I just think that this should be taken out. I think the competitive bidding requirements are very important. I'm not a big bid waiver guy, and I just think we should take it out of there. And it's really cryptic to me why it's even really needed in the first place. So urgent I vote. Thank you.
Representative Larson.
Thank you. Well, the way, folks, the way that worked is this, in the rental assistance program, there's a requirement to get a system in place so that they could get the program out quicker than you would through the traditional procurement process. This was given to the department that generally takes care of family type services. And that process is in place where they invited, my numbers may be wrong, but it's well over 20 different providers that would do systems. They sent out requests for proposals from them. Those proposals come, so an RFQ or whatever. And then if I understood what had taken place as they're getting this rolled out, is I think that they had about 10, it might have been 5 vendors then that have come back with proposals. And really what they were looking for is our systems that could track rental assistance and had done this maybe in similar programs in other states during the CARES Act in the last year. And they was able, so some of the major providers that we look to for systems, IT systems, were asked to come in multiple times and look at that. So this was a waiver around the traditional, means of doing that. And in this bill, as it moves forward, if they had to expand it, allowed them to continue doing so. But my opinion is that even though they were granted some special dispensation here, they just shortened up the time and complied with the intent that we would expect of a legislature, which was to reach out and have a competitive bid on getting this rental assistance program out.
Excuse me, any other members for the first time? Good. Representative Sherwood.
Mr. Speaker, on the amendments, when I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be.
Any other members for the first time? Representative Ottman.
I'm not going to sing this. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
Any other members for the first time? Go ahead, Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And when the brokenhearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer. Let it be. For though they may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer. Let it be. Let it be. Let it be. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm going to allow Representative Nicholas time to get his amendment renumbered, so we don't need to continue this. Is there any more substantive debate on the amendment? I didn't think so.
Yes. Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead,
Pro Tem.
Representative Andrew.
Let it be, let it be. Yeah, there will be an answer. Let it be, let it be, let it be. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
You all are keeping me away from a 15-month-old little Waylon that is very near and dear to me. Go ahead,
Mr.
Representative
Chairman,
Craigo.
can I call a point of order on myself? Is that possible? Let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom. Let it be, please, let it be.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let it be, yeah, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Representative Banks.
Let it be. Yeah, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. And when the night is cloudy and the light that shines on me, shine until tomorrow, let it be.
No. I'll remind all the members of the Minerals Committee, it's going to be a long summer.
And it'll be a better summer.
Representative Heiner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I wake up to the sound of music. Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom. Let it be, let it be. Let it be, let it be. Yeah, let it be.
Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There will be an answer. Let it be, let it be, let it be. Let it be, yeah, let it be. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any members for their second time? Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. There will be an answer. Let it be. Let it be. Let it be. And I think there's more. Where is it? I think that's good enough, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Let it be.
So members, we do have a third reading amendment on this, the fourth and now fourth reading amendment. And I more than anybody have a wonderful sense of humor. But are there any members? Mr. Speaker, any?
So members, you know, we have a great freshman class. There's no doubt about that. And we learned in the virtual session, they're intimidated by nothing. At least virtually nothing. Yet.
Wow. All right, types of things. Any other members, substantive comment for the first time, seeing none, members for the second time, Representative Larson.
Thank you. There's a tear in my beer and I'm crying for you, Greer. You are on my lonely mind. But I will tell you, you folks, that in this process that's gone through, that they really have complied and are complying with the procurement process that we had expected them to comply with. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd vote against the amendment.
Anyone else for a second time before the sponsor? Representative Gray, please bring us home.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Temp. I think maybe they picked the wrong amendment to do that on, because I'm not just going to let it be. I think that I think these competitive bidding requirements are very important, and it's still cryptic to me why we need this in there if they already have been subject to the waiver and have complied with that previous statute. Now, that's done, but I don't want future actions to be done in a way that is not compliant with the procurement and competitive bidding statutes. So it's just really a cryptic line to me. I don't think we need it there, and I'd urge and I vote on the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, members, we are voting on second reading or third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 118. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Chair's in doubt. All those in favor, please rise. Oh, 19. All those opposed? And you're getting these on the screen too, right? What was it? Okay, the amendment is filled, 2133. Next item for our consideration is third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 118. It's Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 118. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll ask for your favorable recommendation on this, and I'll make this quick, and hopefully we don't have another Beatles song following us. But Mr. Speaker and body, what we're doing with this amendment is just allowing the governor at his sole discretion, should he have the ability with the new procurement or with the new regulations that'll be coming out with the new ARPA funds, to reinstate any of the furlough funds back into the employees that were furloughed throughout this pandemic process. So I contacted the Department of A&I, asked them how much this was, and to the average employee, this was about $1,400 that was yanked out of their paychecks. And so what we're looking at is about $2.5 million total. So if you'll recall, we passed the budget with $430 million in cuts, and of that, $2.5 million of that was borne on the backs of a few select state employees, not even all of them, just certain ones and above. And so all we're doing is allowing the governor on this one to reinstate the funding, the money on the funding for any of these furloughed employees. I'll stand for any questions.
Any members for the first time? First time. Members second time for the sponsor? Sponsor? Okay. Okay, we're voting on third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 118. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Amendments failed. All those in favor, please stand. Okay, I'm down 23. Yeah. All those opposed? Got 3 on the screen. How many? 30. Twenty-three, 24. Yeah. Amendments failed, 23, 24. Next amendment for consideration is amendment number 4, Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I would move third reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 118. And this just adds one small phrase that you recall, these are the COVID relief dollars. And basically, it just says to provide funding and endowments for training healthcare professionals and work training programs across the state. You may recall that what we did when we created 118 was kind of make a category of issues or things that we can use the new ARP dollars for. And I think this is probably already covered, but we just wanted to clarify and make sure that you may recall that there's been lots of bills, and our representation was we're going to take all those bills and add them into this bill so that we'll view it on the special session. So we're just making sure we're grabbing all of them, and we'll discuss all of them during the special session. So on and in favor of the amendment, please.
Any members for the first time? First time. Any members for the second time? Second time for the sponsor? Question being called. We're voting on third reading amendment number 4, Senate File 118. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Amendment is adopted. Senate file finally having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
No.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Excused. Crago. Duncan.
Excused.
Excused. Eklund. Air. Flitner.
Excused.
Excused. Fortner.
No.
Gray. Greer.
Aye.
Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Kenner.
Excused.
Excused. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman excused. Newsom.
Excused.
Excused. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stibar. Sweeney. Walters.
Aye.
Washit. Washit.
Excused.
Excused. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Brown.
Excused.
Excused. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Bear, aye to no. Further changes? Wharf? Aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 38 aye, 14 no, 8 excused.
Senate File 118, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 118 has passed the House. And so members and those folks that are watching, we do have members down at signings, and that's why they're off the floor right now. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 130. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 130, sponsored by Senator Driscoll. Charter schools, an act relating to charter schools being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have amendments. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I'd move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 130. Ask for your favorable consideration. So I continue to track what the standing committee amendment did and go through this new process and tried to think through it. And the glaring inconsistency that I couldn't figure out is if we are having an election in up to 3 cases, who pays for it? And so because these are what I would assume property owner elections, you have to have a certified legitimate election, right? You can't just go in and write yes or no on a piece of paper. And if anybody contested that, you actually have to probably go to the county clerk and run this like any other special district election. I would assume. I'm still really confused on how you draw a boundary and just put a circle or a polygon on a map and say, there's a charter school here in the bounds. But if you're going to have an election, it has to be a legitimate election because we're, the way the bill reads kind of demands it. And thus somebody has to pay for it. They just cost money. And so the thought was, well, who should pay for it? Should it be the citizens in that district that you're trying to ask, you know, should there be a charter school in my district or in our geographical landmass? And it would seem to me that wouldn't really be fair because people are probably not likely to say, oh yeah, I'll support a charter school if, but not if I have to pay some money for the election. So it went by, it didn't seem fair to put it on the county, didn't seem fair to put it on the school district. So I kind of ended up saying, well, it just needs to come out of the school foundation program account at the direction of the superintendent of public instruction's office. I don't completely know if that's the correct place, but I do know that if we're going to do these and they cost money, it has to come from somewhere. So I would encourage your agreeableness to having the money come out of the school foundation program.
Okay, any members for the first time? Any members first time? Second time? Second time before the sponsor? Okay. We're voting on third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 130. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The amendment's adopted. Okay. Next item up is a second reading amendment to Senate File 130. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move second reading amendment, third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 130. And ladies and gentlemen, this is pretty simple. You might recall that with the current bill, that it pays 85% of the charter school of what you would otherwise receive. And this just takes that 85 down to 80. And then also it adds a section that says if it's a virtual school, you will receive 65% of what you would normally receive. And so, ladies and gentlemen, why bring this amendment? Well, if you think about what the small schools typically have, let's say 10 students or 15 students or 20 students, they typically receive anywhere between $35,000 to $45,000 per ADM. And so if you have a small virtual school or a small charter school, that means with 15 students, you're going to have a lot of money to pay the teachers a lot of money. And I would respectfully suggest that they can do it if you choose to have a charter school and compete with another small school in a small district, that you can do it and you'll have uncertified teachers, lots of other things, and you don't need a $200,000 principal. So this just says, if you want to do it, you can do it on this amount of money. So on in favor of the amendment.
Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I'm going to surprise you a little bit, folks. I'm going to speak in favor of this amendment. Let me explain to you why. Based on statistics I've gathered from other states, it appears that between 80 and 85 is a reasonable fee for charter schools. And so even though it's a deduct, remember the purpose of this bill is to encourage charter schools to come to this state of Wyoming. This is going to discourage them a little bit more, but it's certainly within the reach of them being feasible and willing to come. The next section on virtual schools, my daughter teaches at a virtual high school in Albuquerque, and she works from her home every day. In fact, she's the department head of the math department, and she's never met the other teachers that she supervises. And so really, this is a good catch. There's no reason for us to pay a higher percentage when there is no brick and mortar costs associated with a virtual school. Now remember, inside the bill indicates that if a virtual charter school comes to Wyoming, let's say Cheyenne, 80% of those students have to be inside of the school district boundaries. So we're not talking about a lot of outside people. And so I think the 65% is a good number. I encourage you to vote aye on this amendment.
Any other members for the first time? First time. Second time before the sponsor? Question being called. We are voting on third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 130. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That amendment is adopted. Next item for our consideration is third reading amendment number 3 to 130. So you got Representative Walters. Are you going to present?
Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. At this time, I'd like to move third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 130 and ask for your favorable consideration. And members, what this does is it changes this bill from actually enacting the ability to go to a new format for creating charter schools to just studying what that would look like. We currently have several charter schools operating in the state of Wyoming that's set up under the existing law, and it worked fine, and they are doing a great job. They are rather successful, and I think it's because of the robust way that we set them up. This bill or Senate file, I think, represents the troubling issues that we've had. We have a 6-page standing committee amendment to try and improve a few of the issues. We've just done 2 more issues because there is so much confusion. As we discussed on committee of the whole, some of the repealers really take away a lot of control and cause a lot more concern. And I just am not sure that this has been vetted well enough. It appears that it came from somewhere else and is trying to be shoehorned into Wyoming law. And so I think it is more suited to just slow down slightly here and let's study it. Let's see how this is going to affect our existing school systems, both financially, both on an ADM basis, and then just make sure that the rules that we're putting into place are what we want to see when we have charter schools coming in, to make sure that they are the same robust, high quality charter schools that we are already enjoying in the state of Wyoming. So again, I would ask for your favorable support. And what this does is turn this bill into a study as opposed to actually implementing the new rules for a charter school. And with that, I would take any questions or proceed however you would like, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and thank you.
Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. On and in support of the amendment, what I learned when I was on recalibration is a simple way of looking at schools. They need to be equitable and they need to be adequate. And I am very concerned that this bill does not address the equitable or adequate part in depth. And I think it would be appropriate to take some time to study it, to make sure when we do go, if we do go down this road, that we are guaranteeing equitable and adequate education for our K-12 students.
Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Members, I'm not going to surprise you on this amendment. The key here is on line 10. Oh, sorry, line 12 that deletes every single page in the bill. So if you're in favor of more studies, then you'll want to vote for this amendment. If you're in favor of the potential of opening the door and allowing more charter schools to come in to the state, you'll vote no on this amendment. I encourage you to vote no. Thank you.
Representative Larson.
I'd encourage an aye vote on the amendment, and it's frankly a little bit different than my previous colleague from up in the land of the Tetons, is I really like the idea of them. I like the idea, as you read in the bill, about maybe focus on kids that have different educational needs than the traditional public school environment. I like the idea of being able to have a charter school that addresses kids that are more focused on CT&E. I really like this. But as the good brainer of this amendment pointed out yesterday in our discussion, as you get reading some of the repealers, and I look at the requirements of the teachers, I look at what do we do with the physical assets of the that we're paying for, who do they belong to at the end of this, if the charter school should go away. So as much as I just don't know that we've got everything done that we need to put these into place. I'm not worried about the equity point, but the point is valid. He has concerns, and I think that there's other concerns that we just haven't completely ironed out. I hope that we move forward, and my fear is that in a study that it would get lost. I hope, but I would run that risk in making sure that we get it correct, so that when we do bring it forward, that we can really have increase and have a more robust system for some of those that maybe are a little bit different, even on the gifted side to the CTE side, or to those that have some different needs in education. I think charter schools could really fill a gap that we perhaps have in our K-12 education, but I'm voting aye.
Representative Olson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. On and against the amendment and for the bill, I'm not going to talk about the germaneness or intent issues with an amendment that completely changes the intent of the bill. But I do think if you, I guess if you want to save paper, I think it's a good amendment because it does delete the entire bill and brings you down to just one little paragraph to study. But I think if you're concerned that maybe there's some issues to work out in the law, I don't think that that's a reason to stop the train at this point in the process. You know, this bill's been through a process. It's been through many hearings with the public. It's been through many amendments. And now here we are with what we have. And the bill is most certainly not perfect. Speaking to maybe some of the previous amendments. Has it been improved some? Possibly. But I think that the school choice issue in Wyoming, you have to move something forward. I think that this bill does that. I don't think the study is appropriate, honestly. I think you move the bill forward, and we do what we always do in Wyoming law. If we have issues as we roll it out and we see what those issues are, then we'll come back like we do every year, and we'll adjust the law. So just encourage you to vote no on this amendment and move the bill forward. Thank you.
Chairwoman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Against the amendment and for the bill, I think the idea that this concept is coming in from outside is really a misdirection. It's been years and years that parents have come toward the school system and asked for options, asked for opportunity for their children where the children don't fit into the box. And if they've been rebuffed and defeated, I think this bill needs to pass. And I think if you look at the amendment, interestingly, you will notice that the word child or the word student is not anywhere in that amendment. And I think that just goes to show the difference between focusing on the children and focusing on the system. So I would urge a no vote on the amendment.
Representative Andrew.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, thank you. If you look towards the end of the committee of the whole amendment, you'll notice that we changed the enacting clause so it is not effective until July 1st, 2022. And we did that to give us time to study the subject. And that, gives us a little pressure to actually do that. So I would suggest that if you want the subject to be studied and if you are in favor of charter schools, you should vote against this amendment for the bill. Thank you.
Any other Representative Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I would like to rise and speak against the amendment and for the bill as well. I think more school choice is good. If you want more charter schools and the opportunity for students to have a choice of learning opportunities, we should vote for the bill and against this amendment. Thank you.
Any other members first time? Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Against the amendment and for the bill again. Let's keep this moving forward. The charter school statutes had a lot of problems for a long time. And if there is something that's found, we're going to have a special session and a budget session in between to fix anything on the edges. But we really got to fix this statute. So urgent aye vote. Thanks. Or no vote on the amendment, aye on the bill.
Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out that there are very, very few examples of where a monopoly is the most excellent way to produce excellence at all. So here we have an opportunity to vote for some competition, and that competition will lead to excellence. We all want to have excellence in education. Here's our opportunity. Vote no on the amendment and for the bill.
Any other members for the first time? Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Wyoming doesn't look like any other state really, and we are in a budget crisis and we are having a hard time figuring out our education system right now. And charter schools could, for better or worse, really change the landscape of what education looks like in the state of Wyoming. And so it's important we know exactly what we're walking into so we're not hurting our rural schools. The concern about what's going to happen to some of our smaller schools if we introduce this new variable. We're juggling a lot of balls right now. We're doing a lot and trying to ensure that we give an equitable education with the little money that we do have. And so I think it's important that we do study this. We know exactly what we're walking into. We don't have a bill that might come forward with errors in it, and we do this knowingly. So I support this amendment and support the amendment. Thank you.
Any other members for the first time? Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. So, we've had an interesting discussion on education. We did a lot of work on education, sent that down the hallway. They're working on it today. And so when I reflect, we're asking for another alteration in how we deliver publicly funded education. Now, I think my family, we made the ultimate school choice. It's not for every family, but we homeschooled our kids. We made that choice. We didn't ask for public funds to do that. We wouldn't have taken the public funds to do that. And I'm not suggesting that this is a bad choice, because that's certainly not the case. I think we do want a robust educational system in Wyoming and options for families that would have different opportunities in mind. It should be on the table, but let's understand what we're putting on the table. Let's understand what we're putting on the table. When my family made the decision, my wife and I made the decision. By the way, school choice, I think, is a parent's thing. I mean, maybe you have a vote with your kids every time they want something, but generally it's the parent that's saying, I want an opportunity for my children, or I want something. And then it becomes a community. As a group of parents decide, it's a community issue. That's where this fits in, to me. So I think school choice is already there, in my view. Now let's decide, how do we have a community choice? A community choice and a robust discussion about that. From my perspective, where we are in what we're doing, this body and the other body, we're trying to hold back on public education funding and spending. That's what you get the sense of, at least the last several years, and certainly this year, we're coming to a place where we're getting to that maybe little Goldilocks point, where we're gonna have some woe back a little bit. So now we're gonna add another thing into it. Let's understand what we have, what our expectations there are, and then we can find those right places. So I'm not actually speaking for or against it, but just think about it in the larger context of what we're doing to examine publicly funded education in the state of Wyoming. And for my family, we would have not been a part of something that took public funds and did something that we wanted to do with our kids. If we wanted our kids in public schools, we would have done it. We would have done it. We didn't. We chose not to. We stepped back from that system. Not for everybody. I get it. I get it. We were in a different place. But just keep it in the context of the whole public education funding and program delivery we've been having. That's what I'd urge you to do. Vote aye or no on the amendment. It's fine. Keep it in context of the entire discussion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Any other members for the first time? Members for the first time, members for the second time? Go ahead, Representative, if you wish to speak. Representative Martinez.
I, like the last speaker, I'm not going to tell you which way to go, but I just want to reflect briefly. I can tell you that if my parents had a choice, they wouldn't have chosen public school, public education. And my mother would have preferred that we would have stayed with the tradition that was in, I think I could say a state, in the square state, just south of the square state, south of us, with the new, I think I could say a state, right? New Mexico. So I just want to urge the body to consider that, because there is an equitable piece, because in terms of finance, whether a chief executive of a school is making 150,000 or 100,000 and 80,000. And of course, being careful not to name names, when we first allowed the charter school here in town, just for reflection, there's the charter school that first came here, went to all those hearings, and they had to go through a robust series of reaching out to the community, and then they rated them on a scale of 1 to 5. I remember going to majority of those hearings. That school, if you look at its original title, was named after an anarchist. I was troubled by that, so they went and changed their name to something real smooth and Spanish sounding. Anyhow, just for us to consider that on the equitable piece, we're also cutting out, again, an entire community of people that have had a large, influence on the state also. And I digress. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any other members for the first time? First time, okay. Members for their second time. I do have a list of 20 or 30 here, so any members second time? Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to just point out that the good speaker made great comments earlier about the choices that he made in his home. I made the same similar choices my wife and I did and homeschooled our children too. And we didn't take state funds to do that. But I think the point here with these charter schools is this is more about a group of people, which the previous speaker was just talking about, who don't financially have that choice to make. They need to get their kids to a better, higher level of education and want to do so, but can't afford to do that with the same choices that many of us already have. If you look at the statistics in charter schools, there are a majority of those who are going into these charter schools who are minorities of a low income status. So if we really want to be the equality state, as the previous speaker said, I think we really need to look at bringing these charter schools in and providing that school choice for those who are lower incomes and potentially minorities. Thank you.
Any other members for their second time? Any members for their second time? Okay. Representative Walters, do you wish to wrap up as a sponsor?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. And I just remind the body that we have a process in place that allows for charter schools to become established, and it's working. We have multiple charter schools in existence today. And by allowing us to continue to study this as opposed to just drastically changing the way we are doing business for charter schools, allows us to continue the opportunity and the discussion to bring in more charter schools, but also make sure that we do so in a very robust and rigorous way. So I'd encourage an aye vote on the amendment and an aye vote on the bill amended. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Okay, members, we're voting on third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 130. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. I'm going to go ahead and chairs in doubt. All those in favor, please rise. You got me. 19. Okay. All those opposed, please rise. '33. Okay. Yeah, the amendments failed, 1933. Senate File 130 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
Aye.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Excused.
Excused.
Fortner.
Aye.
Gray. Greer.
Aye.
Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kinner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman excused. Newsom excused. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Summers.
Excused.
Excused. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters.
No.
Washit excused. Western. Wharf. Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawannetzer. Mr. Speaker,
Madam
Closing.
Clerk, yeah, Speaker, the majority floor leader's here.
Summers? Summers? Aye. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 44 aye, 12 no, 4 excused.
Senate File 130, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 130 has passed the House. So members, we are now moving into the accelerated list. It was on third reading. We've got quite a few amendments on a few of the bills. If you have an amendment pending, just let us know. And so we'll start to move through those. Did you need? Okay, very good. All right, so the next bill for our consideration is Senate File 38. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 38, sponsored by Blockchain, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations, an act relating to corporations, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have amendments. Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. So we saw the amendment earlier that I moved the, third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 38. And as we saw earlier, the fee was set at $1,000, which I do appreciate the intent behind the bringer of the amendment. I certainly agree with the logic. I just think the number itself was a little stiff. What I'd like to do with this is drop that down so it's more commensurate with some of the other states, certainly our neighboring states and across the country, and get a price point that signals that you guys certainly have to pay your fair share, but we don't want to discourage people from filing. So please vote aye.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, thank you. And on and against the amendment, remember this is for foreign, so domiciled outside of the state. And I just think if, we need to realize something off of this. So I would encourage you to vote no.
Any members for the first time? Members first time, second time before the sponsor?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. So this is for companies that want to be domiciled in Wyoming for limited liability protection. So this isn't for foreign companies. These are for companies that want to incorporate in Wyoming. And we just want to make a fee that's, again, that ensures they pay their fair share, but is also isn't discourage them from filing in the state. So please consider voting aye. Thank you.
Okay, we're voting on a third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 38. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? No. The amendment has failed. We are now on to third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 38. Representative Stith.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I move third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 38 and ask for your favorable consideration. This also relates to the fees. Earlier today, we adopted a fee schedule that says that when you amend your articles of organization that you pay a $150 fee. On page 11, and that was adopted, on page 11, lines 4 through 6 of the current bill, there's a requirement in this bill that every time you update your smart contract, you have to amend your articles of organization. So every time, it's hard to know how often that would happen, but software tends to get updated a lot, right? So it's pretty, and it's unclear why anyone frankly would care that they're updating their articles of organization if they're just updating their smart contracts. So what this amendment does is delete the requirement that you amend your articles of organization every time you do an update. Typical practice for limited liability companies right now is that you file your articles of organization and you don't make many amendments, typically. Typically, you just let it sit there. And if you change how your organization is governed, typically you're doing that in your operating agreement. So it's rather unusual to have this requirement to have many, many continuous amendments to the articles. This just deletes it, streamlines it, and I think it makes it more business friendly.
Any other members for the first time? Members for the first time, Representative Yen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Temp. I think this is good. I really don't understand why we would want to amend the articles of organization every single time a smart contract gets updated. So I would vote aye. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Temp.
Any other members for the first time? First time. Members for the second time? Second time for the sponsor? Sponsor?
Please vote aye.
Words of wisdom. Yes. We're voting on third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 38. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? The amendment is adopted. Senate File 38 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
Aye.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
No.
Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman excused. Newsom. Nicholas. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters.
Aye.
Washit excused. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Ottman, confirm your vote, please. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Larson Dan, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 53 aye, 5 no, 2 excused.
Senate File 38, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 38 has passed the House. Members, we're going to just take just a short break out of third reading and do some, sign some bills so we can send them to our colleagues at the other end and get that process out of the way before they adjourn for the day. So just give us, we'll just stand at ease for just, actually, I'll keep going with, we don't have any amendments on the next couple. Reading clerk, do we have amendments on the next one? 68. We'll just stand at ease for just a moment. Chief Clerk's getting our bill signings in order. All right, members, with that order of business, the signing of enrolled acts. The first enrolled act for our consideration is Enrolled Act 73 being original House Bill 121.
Enroll. Stand. House Enrolled Act 73 being original House Bill 121. An act relating to state-funded capital construction, creating an account, providing definitions, providing appropriations for purposes related to state-funded capital construction, making certain appropriations subject to specified terms and conditions, modifying prior appropriations, providing for the acceptance and purchase of real property, providing appropriations for and recreating an advisory task force related to state facilities, authorizing and specifying requirements for higher education projects, creating a subcommittee, providing for the acceptance of contributions, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 73 being original House Bill 121. I have so signed. Next, Enrolled Act 74. Reading clerk.
House Enrolled Act 74 being original House Bill 150. An act relating to public funds and administration of government, amending authority, requirements, and procedures for the executive department's acceptance and expenditure of federal funds, amending the authority of the executive department and requirements and procedures for the modifications and amounts authorized for expenditure of other funds under emergencies and other circumstances, specifying restrictions on budgeting authority conferring on the executive department, repealing existing emergency expenditure authority, providing a yearly appropriation, providing for legislative review and actions, creating and amending definitions, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 74 being original House Bill 150. I have so signed. Next, Enrolled Act 75.
House Enrolled Act 75 being original House Bill 7. An act relating to insurance, amending the definition of the disability insurance, specifying that the regulation of air ambulance membership organizations and their membership and plans is not insurance, establishing registration requirements and regulatory standards for the air ambulance membership organizations, making conforming amendments, requiring rulemaking, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 75 being original House Bill 7. I have so signed. Next, Enrolled Act 76.
House Enrolled Act 76 being original House Bill 156. An act relating to alcoholic beverages, establishing a 24-hour permit for winery permit holders to sell their manufactured wine off premises, authorizing fees, providing that microbrewery and winery permit holders may hold a manufacturer's license, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 76 being original House Bill 156. Congratulations, Representative Sherwood. Next, Enrolled Act 77.
House Enrolled Act 77 being original House Bill 190. An act relating to vehicle certificates of title, authorizing non-resident business entities to title vehicles in the state as specified, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 77 being original House Bill 190. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Brown. Next, House Joint Resolution 3.
House Enrolled Joint Resolution 3 being original House Joint Resolution 11. A joint resolution requesting the federal government to respect state sovereignty, to review and correct federal actions which infringe upon the right to bear arms, and to recognize the impact of federal land use and natural resource development policies on Wyoming citizens, and to collaborate with the state in adopting the implementing the policies, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign and roll Joint Resolution number 3 being original House Joint Resolution 11. I have so signed. Congratulations, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Members will continue that business of bills on third reading and final passage. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 68.
Senate File 68, sponsored by Senator Ellis, absenteeism in public schools, an act relating to education, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Senate File 68 having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Andrew. Repeat, please. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
Aye.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
No.
Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Haroldson. Harshman. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman excused. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters.
Aye.
Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 57 aye, 2 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 68 having been received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House. Senate File 68 has passed the House. Next, Senate File 76.
Senate File 76, sponsored by Senator Doc Stater. Broadband Development Program Amendments, an act relating to the Broadband Development Program being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Senate File 76 having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? Hearing Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
No.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
No.
Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman excused. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivers, Sweeney, Walters,
Aye.
Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Nicholas, would you confirm your vote? Thank you. Closing vote, are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 46 aye, 13 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 76, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 76 has passed the House. Next Senate File is 112.
Senate File 112, sponsored by Senator Landon. Insurance discount for accident prevention training, an act relating to motor vehicle insurance being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Senate File 112, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt,
Aye.
Clausen, Clifford, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner,
Aye.
Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hunt, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, McGuire, Martinez, Nyman excused, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivers, Sweeney, Walters,
Aye.
Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote, are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 59 aye, 1 excused.
Senate File 112, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 112 has passed the House. The next Senate file for consideration is 121.
Senate File 121, sponsored by Senator Perkins. State funds, investments and distributions, an act relating to public funds being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We do have amendments. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 121 and ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, you may recall that we had discussion yesterday regarding whether these dollars would go to the permanent funds or be made more readily available. And that it was the opinion of the body yesterday that we would put this in the general fund and then the school fund reserve account. So all this amendment does is instead of doing 2/3, 1/3, it does half and half. And the reason that we're doing it, that I'm suggesting we go half and half is because where the greatest need is for this 1% that we're talking about on the severance tax is on the education side. So I think it would be better split 50-50. And in addition to that, instead of going to the general fund, I put it in the permanent mill fund reserve account. I think it's a little bit more protected there and we can reach in and get it when we need it. And eventually it will tip if we don't need it. So on support of the amendment, please.
Thank you. Member, first time, Mr. Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So maybe a question back to the bringer, because I don't think I heard. Did you split this between two permanent accounts, or is this going to two liquid accounts? Because I think it's going to two permanent accounts. Nope. Okay, because I haven't looked at the amendment yet. Thank you.
All right, Chairman Zwanitzer, first time.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Speaker. Just to clear that up, it's going under the amendment, half into a permanent account and half into a reserve account, which is a holding account that then goes into a permanent account. So slightly more liquid, but I would still ask you to stick to the policy we had yesterday and last week and 2 weeks ago on the budget.
Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It actually, the whole amount is going into two liquid accounts. They're both the reserve accounts. This is actually the way the bill was originally written. Got amended a little bit in both bodies. The difference here is it's 50-50 on the severance tax. The original bill had 2/3, 1/3 because the permanent trust fund is about 2/3 the size of the common school account, and about 1/3 of the severance tax, it comes from school minerals. So that's why we've kind of settled on this third. This moves it to 50-50, puts it in the reserve account, certainly can appropriate from the reserve account, does not tip until the 5-year, 150% of the 5-year average. So I think it's genius, and I think it strikes a nice little balance. So appreciate the Chairman of Appropriations bringing this amendment.
Any other members, first time? Representative Stiff, first time.
Mr. Speaker, on and in support of the amendment. These are both liquid accounts. And if you look at the goldenrod, these reserve accounts are kind of depleting slightly over time. So I think it's a good idea on and for.
Representative Hallinan, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. I think this corrects the issue of putting this money into a permanent fund where it can't be touched. And I think it's a good amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any other member, first time? Members, first time. Representative Obermuller.
My original, thank you, Mr. Speaker. My original concern about this was that it didn't have any, the original one, putting it in the permanent fund, we just couldn't access it if we needed to. So this amendment, I think is, the way I understand this amendment, it brings it back to what we passed with our budget. So if it's doing that, I'm on and in favor. Thank you.
Representative Brown, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd urge an aye vote if you know what in the world we're doing. I'd urge a no vote if you don't. Thank you.
Any other member, first time, seeing none, second time, Representative Summers, second time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. On and against the amendment. And so just remember, these reserve accounts eventually tip, and they tip into the permanent funds. And so I would urge you to resist this amendment. If you just want it in another pot of money, you don't want it flowing, there's one that's going to bring it to the LISRA, but let's not hang it up in these reserve accounts. I don't support that. I think it's putting it coffee cans people don't see. And I urge your no vote.
Any other member? We're on second time before the sponsor, to the sponsor, Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So the reserve accounts only tip when they reach a certain balance, roughly, and we're not even near those balances. What this does is it sets the money in a reserve account so that if we need it, as what the discussion was yesterday, it's very simple to go in and use it, and we can then redirect it either to the general fund or we can put it in funding for education. But what it does do is make it so that cash is not readily available to scoop up on the next bill and land in the general fund. And so and eventually it will tip, or we'll go in and grab it for emergencies. So this is precisely, I think, the intent of the original amendment from our good majority floor leader, but it also protects it at the same time. So on in favor.
Thank you. Members, we are voting on third reading, amendment number 1, Senate File 121. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment is not adopted. Next amendment, 3002, Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 121. Ask for your favorable consideration. And so, ladies and gentlemen, what this does is takes out the legislative deficit control account that we've had in statute for a couple of years that currently has no money in it. I will say that unbeknownst to everybody, I asked that actually the interest from SIPA apparently in 2 years was going to start being fueled into this. And so the second part, when you look at the repealer, it basically, any interest from SIPA that would have gone to this will just stay in the SIPA account. So don't get too worried about that. Just to remind you, the original intent of what our good friends down the hall wanted with this bill was to take out the SIPA altogether. We put that back in, but I think we can all agree that we can take out, I wouldn't even call this a coffee can. It's kind of like that empty, like coffee scoop in the coffee can. And so one less place to park some money. Hopefully, I just think it's a good thing. We haven't used the account right now where we're just better off without one more coffee can.
Thank you, members. First time, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please vote this amendment down. The distribution starts this fiscal year, and it was always meant to start this fiscal year. And this tagline of less coffee cans is good is not necessarily accurate. I mean, if the coffee cans are transparent, it is good to have different distributions and not just have one or two slush funds that are sort of tenuous and out there just in the solar system. We don't know what they're doing other than that every time there's a bill, they're gonna have a distribution from one of those two slush funds. So it's good to have a deficit control account. It appeases the other chamber that is concerned that we don't have a way of controlling Lizerin, preventing it from being used for other purposes. But it's also good policy. And we ended in 2019 at a really good final compromise on the issue of this SIPA distribution, which starts this year. So let's not get rid of it. Urge a no vote on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Obermuller. First time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment, one of the issues is timing of this particular account, which is really puzzling. When you're making a profit in a business or any entity, it makes sense to plan for a year in which you are thinking you might have a deficit, put some money away for that eventuality to control that future deficit. But when you're already in a deficit, what actually does an empty deficit control account do? And why does it make any sense to put any money into it? The horse is already out of the barn. Little ag lingo there, city kid. And so it simply makes no sense to put money in that actually contributes to the structural deficit that we have. As you put money in, it obviously takes money out of the operating accounts and increases the structural deficit. So the timing is problematic. And the other one is the simplification issue. One of my major goals is to reduce the number of buckets, and to start with an obscure bucket like this that has nothing in it seems to me to be a good place to start. So for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I support this amendment. Thank you.
Any other members? First time, third reading amendment number 2. Any other members? First time. Members first time. First time. And second time before the movement. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not obscure. There was a long process that occurred to get this account. There was a series of concurrence votes that we defeated 3 times to finally get this, to finally get a conference committee in place where we could get this distribution in place. And the idea is that it's a portion of the SIPA flow starting this fiscal year. So the idea is when we're in a period of deficit, we don't need to have the full SIPA amount, which is for discretionary projects that frankly we can't afford right now. So the idea was we were going to divert 35% of the SIPA flow post-penitentiary distribution of $10 million, post-major maintenance. After that, we're going to divert a portion of the SIPA flow to another account that is specifically for our deficits. It is not obscure. It's all in the title. And I can tell you there was a very extensive process to get to this point. It's a good policy. And it's a better policy than just saying we need as few accounts as possible. I mean, I don't understand the thinking there. Like if there's sort of a crisp thought process behind it, then I would understand it, but it's not. It's just a tagline. And I'm all for transparency. And I actually think you can have more transparency with more accounts, especially when this is clear what this is for. This is for backfilling a deficit. So as opposed to the LISRA, which frankly, it's unclear what the LISRA is supposed to do. I think it should be for backfilling deficits when we're in a period of deficits, which we are right now, although some might debate. But for others, it seems to be just sort of there for anything. But this is clearly for backfilling of a deficit, okay? So it is clear what it does. It's more clear than the other accounts. It's probably the most clear of any account. And there was a long process to get to this point. And appreciate the former speaker for, as opposed to the other body, keeping this in there, because I think he knows, the process that was used to get to this point. So thank you. I'd urge a no vote on the amendment. Thanks.
We're on second time before the sponsor, to the sponsor, Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, it doesn't make sense to park money in a deficit control account when we're in a deficit. And I mean, honestly, there's no protections on this account more than any other account. Besides, it has a cool name, Legislative Deficit Control Account. But for all intents and purposes, it's just another holding account that we can take money out of or put money into at any time. And certainly this year, the intention is to do this with it. But I think even freshmen at this point know that every year in statute and the budget, we move stuff around. And so it just doesn't need to be there. And I actually think it's a pretty good compromise. If the intent of the original bill was to take out SIPA, well, we'll leave SIPA, but we don't need the LDCA. I don't know what the cool trendy acronym for that is, but we really we don't need it.
All right, members, we're voting on third reading, amendment number 2, Senate File 121. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. Division being requested. All those in favor, please rise. Thank you, online folks. We have your votes. Members in the chamber, I'm sorry, I was talking to the folks online, so they didn't have to stand with their hands. Thank you. Those opposed? Less than 39. The amendment is adopted. Next, we have third reading amendment number 3. Chairman Harshman.
Mr. Speaker, I move third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 121. I just have a quick question. And I think I know, we adopted the Nicholas Amendment? We did not. Okay. Okay, this is really important. I tell you, I was up here, I had the Wolverine and another little voracious critter. And I left there, both my ankles just about chewed down the bone. I was begging, please. Haven't had many days like that on the floor and lost by 3 votes. So I'm trying to think, what's a middle ground on this? I understand you want some liquidity. but we're trying to find this balance. So here's what's at stake. I'll make it even, say it's right at around $150 million per year. Current law, that's all going right into the permanent funds. The two big ones, 150 million a year, and it might be 10 million more than that, but let's just make that simple. And then it's close to about, divided in half, say 75 million, let's make this easy math, 1% severance. The other 75 million are return on the investments, spending policy. So current law, this bill doesn't pass, current law, we will take 150 million and put it away permanently. And the only way to do that would be a notwithstanding in the budget each year to intercept that. And those aren't easy. So what this bill's trying to compromise is saying, okay, we'll take the severance tax half and go ahead and save it. But the investment income off the spending policy, we're going to go ahead and use that for today's people. And that grows. It's 75 million this year. Next year it'll be 80. Year after that it'll be 85. Year after that will be 90 because the account keeps getting bigger. 95, 100, it's going to keep growing. The severance tax piece, it was just a few years ago, that thing was like 300 million a year or more, 400 million a year. Things down to like 80. It's been shrinking. So I'm asking you, what do you want to keep in play for today's people? Something that's going to kind of grow? Or this one that's kind of bottomed out now? And that's the opportunity we have, is to free up one of these revenue streams for today's people and for our, for schools, for the Department of Health, Corrections, or lock it all away. Because if this bill does not pass, it's all going to be all saved. That's the law. So here's the elegant compromise. Liquidity, savings. So this amendment, Mr. Speaker, would stay with the 2/3, 1/3. And this, it's a long story in this chamber. I have members using props in the back row back there. Anyway, this is so fun. Anyway, so it takes the 2/3, 1/3 split, and those severance tax payments come quarterly. So I think it's June, October, January, and April. And then they would sit in this OPSTA account still. They wouldn't go to the permanent funds, but when are we in session? January, February, right into March. So if we need those funds, they're right there. We say, hey, we don't need them. We leave town, and then in May, they would tip into those permanent funds if we decided we didn't need them. So we would hold them each quarter for a year. You'd see a year's worth. We'd be here all, you could appropriate out of them, as we're all duly elected appropriators. And it wouldn't just go each quarter and be deposited into the permanent funds, like is what is going to happen if this bill dies. And the spending policy is dropping starting next year. I'm just trying to reach a compromise, and none of it's going to be perfect, but I'm trying to not lock away all 150 of it. Keep half of it for today's people, a little generational equity. Stand for any questions, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, would you move the amendment just for clarity's sake for the body, please?
Okay,
And I
Mr.
apologize. Maybe you did, but I'm not confident.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 121. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members, first time, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm torn, right? I understand what the good speakers want to do, and I think you've got two ideologies here. You've really got this frame of mind that, do we want to save money and continue to get larger returns and keep doing it this way and ride that horse? Or do we want to take and try to cut out our deficit right now? And I think that's the entire conversation. And that's going to be the will of this body. This split of 2/3, 1/3, 1/2, 1/2. I think most people's minds are just fried with these fractions. And I don't think we're really focusing in not so much on the fractions and what's going on there. It's really much more important than that. And it's whether we're taking control of our situation right now or whether we're looking at doing it in the future by getting bigger returns and shoving these monies into permanent funds. And I am really torn. I really am, because I understand the benefits of both, right? Time value money. You put more money in, it grows longer over time, you get a bigger value. That's smart. But I also recognize that you don't want to be sitting there starving your family while you're trying to save money for retirement. I really have a hard time believing that that's the right way. I'm not sure where I really ultimately fall. And that's why I don't say I'm on and for or on and against, because man, I'll be first one to admit, the first year I was in here and we amended that SPA and we changed everything else. And I watched my speaker point and give me good directions, and I trust this guy. And now he's saying, hey man, I screwed up, but trust me this time. Come on. I really, really think that this body needs to think of it in these terms. Do you want to solve the problem that we're having right now with the money that's coming in right now? Or do we want to put it out there into a permanent fund and attempt to fix this in the future and have larger returns in the future? That's really the ultimate price that you're talking about here. So I'm hoping we have some more good debate. Sitting up in the chair yesterday, I didn't get a chance to have the debate. There was, I think, 6 people that got up and talked about this. And now I think I'll make 7. And I'm hoping that we can have some good debate on this, because I'm really not solidified my decision yet. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following a little bit after the previous speaker, I really feel the need to send the Zamboni around and clean up the ice here a little bit. And I hope that this fits in with the discussion on this particular amendment, because by now we've had so many amendments that repeal previous amendments that and without paper amendments, frankly, I'm a little at sea as to where we ultimately are. So I would really like to hear, I think I see there's 2 more amendments to come, but I think if I clear the ice off here and start the 3rd quarter with fresh ice, I can probably track the next 2 amendments. But I would just like to confirm, where are we at with the SIPA? Where are we at with the SPA? And currently, as I understand, this amendment would make the OPSTA money available to us during session and then send the balance to the permanent funds, which I'm okay with that. But so if we could, and Mr. Speaker, I think this actually is pertinent, this amendment, because we keep repealing other amendments. So the SIPA, the SPA, and then I think we can finish out the 3rd session.
Representative Summers, first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So what's clear in this is we still got 2 policy decisions. One, we haven't argued about at all. I think the body has stood firm for the most part on retaining the 5%. We've talked about it, but there's not been one amendment to discuss that. So we're good with that. It's really about what we do with the 1% severance. The thing I don't like about it's not the worst amendment. The worst amendment was kind of how it came. But the reason I don't like this is it memorializes the fight we're currently having in the Appropriations Committee between the House and the Senate. It memorializes the fact that we cannot make a decision where these monies should go. So we just stick it in that account, and then we flow it to the permanent account when we can't come to agreement. What's the House position? You ultimately, you all have to decide this. My position is it should flow to the general fund and it should flow to the school foundation program account. Ultimately, we will go if they decide to appoint a conference committee, we'll make that decision. But just solidifying the argument that currently exists today, I'm not sure is policy. I think it's just memorializing a standoff. And so you guys got to think about it. There's another amendment coming. I think it's a good policy decision as well. I don't support this amendment, but it's not as bad as it could be.
All right, members, we've seemed to decide that we have bad, worse, and et cetera. Let's just continue with the good discussion on policy things, and we don't have to make judgments about which one is higher or lower on some rating scale that we each have an individual thought on. So Representative Mueller, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment. We have a history of how this works with that OPSTA account and the money sitting in it. That's money that pops in and out of the goldenrod. So when it's out, you don't see it. And then when it's in, you see it, and then it pops back out. So what was the history this last year? If you will recall, the governor had the first bite of the apple in presenting a budget, and he profiled the $128 million 1% money. Then it went to JAC, and they immediately moved it into that OPSTA account where it sat and was not profiled. And none of us saw that money until when? Till the last day of the budget at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And Amendment 27 was the first time you saw that money from the time the governor had it on the chief executive, to the very last day. So the problem for this body is if you go with this amendment, you won't see that money depending on where it's sitting at any given time. And it's become a political football. And one day it's in, one day it's out, the next day it's in. So if this body wants to start to control that piece, it has to go with the way the bill is right now, where you can see the money every day. And when you come back next year or the year after, not this biennium, because this biennium is set, but then going forward, that money will be profiled, and the arguments surrounding the policies of that money will be in your hands, not someone else is playing ping pong with it. So on and against this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members, first time. Other members, first time. First time. Seeing no one for their first time. Vice Chairman Larson Lloyd.
We just want to remind, as we talk about this office account,
Go ahead and recognize the chair while you're there, please.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, pal, I apologize. Folks, if I may, let's just, don't forget that the office accounts was created in our budget process. It's not a statutory account, okay? It's not in the green books. And so bear that in mind a little bit too. That was part of we done that so that we could keep control of it in the budgetary process that you get to participate in as well. And but that's where the office is at. It's not a statutory account.
Thank you. Representative Hallinan, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, this year, the budget shows that we're going to put 64 million into the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund and 64 million into the Common School Permanent Land Fund. That's just for this year. That's $128 million we're going to put into permanent funds by this year's budget. And then we're talking about here about putting another $80 million in next year. So that's over $200 million we're going to be putting into permanent land funds and the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund. I think that's too much. I think we're going to need that $200 million for our current expenses. We have a deficit, and I think the position that the Summers Amendment or the amendment that he passed originally, I think that's a good way to spend that money. Half would go into the general fund and half would go into the school foundation fund. So for that reason, I'd be against this current amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any other members, first time? Members, first time, members, first time. Seeing none, members for their second time. Second time, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I'm going to ask for a no vote on this. And the main reason why is what the good representative from the Camel Country just talked about. We're really talking about real money here. This is finally a situation where we're not going to ask for taxes. We're not going to do any of these other things. We're using the money that we've got coming in to work for our problems that we have today. And frankly, I'm struggling with this idea that we're going to shove more money into the permanent accounts. I don't understand why we have this insatiable need to continue saving. It's done good for us when the times were good. Times are not good anymore. I will say, it's been kind of nice that we've got oil back up above $60 a barrel. That helps, right? But we have a chief executive of this country right now that is holding leases unavailable for us, which means there's not a lot of new production coming in. So I don't foresee this in the next 4 years happening. But what I will say above all else, and the reason why I'm against this amendment, is what the good majority floor leader just said a few minutes ago. We're going to codify, we're going to put in the green books what we've been fighting about for the past 2 days. And then it's just going to go to the budget process and we're going to see this one big word, notwithstanding. I'm going to be honest with you. I think this debate is actually pointless. I think it's legitimately pointless. The notwithstandings that happen in the budget process completely eliminate everything that we're talking about with this. And we see it every single year. So I'm going to ask for a no vote. Let's use the money for today's problems. Let's not continue trying to find ways to raise taxes or anything like that if we don't have to. We've got money right now. Stop saving. Let's feed the kids.
Any other member for their second time? We're on second time. All right, members, I know we're getting tired. Let's be a little more cautious with our debate. Let's be more cautious. We're on second time. Second time. To the sponsor, Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thought I would change mics. It's a different feel back here. Let me just say what's at stake. Because we're not Nebraska, where we're a unicameral legislature, where what we pass out of here then becomes law. Hey, the amendment that the majority floor leaders amendment that was adopted, putting this in the general fund and the school foundation fund. Hey, if it was unicameral, Hercules, I'd be doing jumping jacks over that deal. We should. I agree. Totally. I've been the guy fighting to trust our trust funds and our revenue streams. Put a significant part of my life into that. It's helped us. But I tell you, those days are over. They were like 4-year windows. And if this bill does not pass, you are going to, now the word was used, stuff money. I don't want to stuff money. You will stuff more money in the permanent accounts than ever before if this bill does not pass. Period. And I'm trying to find a sweet spot so there'll at least be a conference committee. This bill was, I can't tell you that, but it was really close. One vote came over here. Hey, no, this is serious. I mean, this is about today's people. If the current law stays the way it is, if we don't change it, we will, quote, stuff more money than we ever have. And if that's what you want to do, then pass this baby out of here like that. And let's then keep our fingers and toes crossed that they appoint a conference committee. And that conference committee will not come back with that amendment. It just can't. There won't be, I can't predict it totally, but geez, I've been fighting these battles for a while. And I think I'm trying to get us closer so we can get a compromise. This amendment keeps the money liquid through the legislative session. It codifies in the green books, the OPSTA account. So it is profiled. It's not a budget account that's not profiled. So important. So you can all see, you can make appropriations out of it. And then if we're good, okay, we'll tip it over and save it. But we're not going to take that spending policy cut. That's going to happen starting next year. We will save more money than ever in the permanent funds if this bill does not pass. I agree, the bill is, it's genius the way it is now. With the amendment that you had, I'm just trying to get us through the bicameral nature of this. I don't know, maybe I'm too worried about it. Maybe we'll appoint a conference committee, it'll all work out, and we'll go back to kind of where we were. And then will we agree on that? I don't know. But if the current law, I know, I'm in my second filibuster in 2 days. Anyway, we got a lot to lose here. And so anyway, I hope, please support the amendment to try to get us to the in line where we can at least use half of this money that's going to go to savings, pull it back from savings and use it for today's people. That's all I'm trying to do here. So on, and I appreciate your aye vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Members, we are voting on third reading amendment number 3, Senate File 121. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment has not been adopted. Division requested. All those in favor, please rise. Thank you, Representative Walters. We've got you. All those opposed? Thank you, Representative Fortner and Representative Burt. More than 19. Amendment has not been adopted. Next amendment for consideration, number 4, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 121 and ask for favorable consideration. So I know people maybe get a little antsy here, but if you think about sessions, there's usually 3 types of bills. There's social bills, there's administration of government bills, and then there's sort of the fiscal issues. And I'd say this is probably the top 3 bill on the fiscal issues, and we got it on the last day, but it is extremely important. So I think this amendment, the body's been clear, they want to keep this 1% severance liquid. Let's just put 100% into LISRA, which is sort of the intermediary account. It can tip into the general fund. It can tip into schools. If we choose to do that, below 500 million actually, but let's not set aside a whole amount into the general fund. It's not good policy. Let's just put it into LISRA. It's not creating a new account. Let's put it into LISRA into our cash savings. We can choose to do whatever we want with it, but I think this is a better policy if we're going to keep it liquid. So I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members, Representative Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I'm not going to push back on this one. I think that, vote your conscience on this. And one, it either goes to where you're going to spend it or it goes to a savings account that's liquid. I think either one is a decent policy decision. So ambivalent.
Any other members? First time, Representative Yin, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So it looks like it drains SIPA, puts it into the legislative deficit control account, and then anything that goes into the SIPA will then go into legislative deficit control account. So then my question is, are we just renaming SIPA to the legislative deficit control account? And what does that mean, especially if both are just the same thing, which is a coffee can that we can take out at any time? So I guess I'm a no on it, but it's renaming SIPA is what it sounds like. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any other member for their first time? First time, Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too am slightly ambivalent, but I do think the rainy day fund is something that a lot of citizens do keep an eye on. They don't typically know what the other accounts are. Not that I'm not trying to hide anything, but I'm just saying to me, if we say, yes, we put money in the general fund for agencies and we put money in the school fund for schools, they'll be like, okay. But if we say we put the same money in the rainy day fund after cutting seniors and disabled people and such, like, people might not really care for that. I don't think it makes any actual difference in the reality of our fund flow and our budgeting, but I'm not sure that it looks quite as happy in this way. So I think I'm probably going to vote no.
Any other member, first time? First time, any other member? First time? First time. Come on, baby, turn the lights down low. Anybody, first time? Second time? Second time, Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm clearly a little tired because I was on the wrong amendment, and I do want to apologize to the bringer of the amendment to speak against an amendment when I was on the wrong one. So again, I apologize. Please ignore everything I said on first time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any other member? We're on second time to the sponsor. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So again, one good thing about this too, and the majority floor leader was reminding me that the LISRA isn't profiled. So I mean, that's a good piece of this amendment. Appreciate the clarification. It's talking about the next amendment, the representative from District 16. The body's been pretty clear. We want to keep this liquid. Let's just put it in the savings account or the stabilization reserve account. I'm not sure. The rainy day account was what it used to be called. Okay. In colloquial terms, that's not in statute. I'm not sure that's what it is now. It is more of an account to backfill deficits and also an account where occasionally we appropriate it for any purpose we want. It's a cash savings account, but I don't think we should be putting this into the general fund, and it makes a huge difference, in my opinion, to answer the chairman of Labor Health. It is a humongous difference. So urge and I vote on this amendment. Let's just put these funds into LISRA. Thank you.
Thank you, members. We are voting on third reading amendment number 4, Senate File 121. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. All those in favor, please stand. Thank you. Those opposed? That was 21. All right, more than 21. Amendment has not been adopted. We have another amendment, third reading number 5, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 5 to Senate File 121. Okay, we're on a different topic now. This is on the SIPA flow. This amendment, the people that want less accounts, you should be really thrilled about because it reduces an account. It gets rid of SIPA. And what it does is the SIPA amount goes in to the deficit control account within LISRA. The major maintenance flow remains. The penitentiary account flow remains. And the rest of the funds remain within the deficit control account, okay? And responding to the point that was made on the last amendment that I assume was directed to this amendment, that this is replacing SIPA with LEADCA. No, it's not, because the SIPA is basically an account that is for discretionary building projects, and the governor can set sort of the stage for it by statutorily requesting those funds for certain projects. So first of all, I mean, it kind of takes the legislature out of that process, which I don't like, as someone who believes in the legislative branch very highly. But it also sort of earmarks those funds for discretionary projects, which I don't think is good policy when you're in a period of deficits. Maybe it was okay policy when we had a 400% increase in revenues over a 10-year period, but it's not good policy right now. So this gets rid of SIPA, but it doesn't totally replace it with the LDCA. It says it keeps the flows for the penitentiary and for major maintenance, but it says the remainder is going to go into cash savings. And if we want to fund discretionary projects out of that, that's fine. But let's not earmark these funds and say, hey, we're definitely going to use them for discretionary projects. I think it's a good move for us in this period. So I urge an aye vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Members first time, Representative Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. On and against the amendment. You know, SIPA has a long history back to the days of the tranches. And it's really, we have these monies that come in really from our investment income. And we can't really determine how much that's going to be because we know that the vagaries of the market, right? But what we do know is that there is a chance to use some of that for one-time projects. Now we have cubby holed some of that for school major maintenance inside of the SIPA account. And we're using quite a bit of that now for major maintenance elsewhere. We have in the budget and other times. And I think this SIPA account is a good account. And I think it has served a very good purpose to build a lot of projects and provide a lot of major maintenance around the state. And I just encourage you to resist this amendment.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Larson, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would encourage you to defeat this amendment. It's kind of been an interesting conversation over the last couple of days as we talk about how and where we should put the money. And we hear that coffee cans are the root of all evil. And then we hear coffee cans are the greatest thing next to peanut butter that ever happened. And I think it's frankly, it's perspective on how you use your money and where you like to keep it put. We've heard the argument on the SIPA fund that we need to do it like at home, where you just have one checking account. I just want all of you to think how many checking accounts each of you have. And I'm going to guess that the majority of you here in your family and your business have more than one. And so I don't know that holds the water. You take your several checking accounts, you take your savings accounts, you take your investments, you take all of that. That is kind of what we do in our real life. And so when we set up the SIPA account, and the good representative from up in the center part of the state is right. We use it for specific projects. There's kind of a financial philosophy that has been popular for people in their personal, this guy that gets up and tells you how to save your money and get out of debt. It's very popular and it's very wise. But he says if you need to buy stuff, pay cash for it. Put it in an envelope, right? Put it in an envelope, keep it, pay cash, and avoid all of that. Well, welcome to SIPA. That's our envelope, and we've used it to pay for the state hospital. It took us a few years, but we'd get some of that. We get that money in, and we'd stick it in the envelope in the Department of Construction, designated for that, so that we didn't have to go out and bond. And we paid cash for it. Took us several years. We've done the same thing for the Life Resource Center, done the same thing for the Casper's office building. There's things that we build in the state, special projects that do it. Doesn't have to be solely for that. You've seen this year, and the good representative's understanding is correct, that the governor can come in and profile it and use it, but he does not take away the legislature's ability to appropriate it. So he profiled it this year to take care of school major maintenance, but he couldn't do it without our blessing. We had to approve it, and we kind of fought that battle back and forth. We were going to take major maintenance out of general fund, or we're going to take it out of the SIPA. And what was the result of using our SIPA funds to take care of school major maintenance? We have 4 or 5 community college projects that were envelopes on the refrigerator that we were wanting to stick cash in to get built, that we said, no, that was a priority. We didn't. Major maintenance was more important, and we agreed with that. We did come back and put some money in that. So I hope you understand the importance of this SIPA and what we have done with it, and what we frankly will continue to do with it, because it comes in and it allows us to focus on some of these projects that are needed throughout the state for in our colleges, in our institutions, and we can divert it to major maintenance. I think I shared with you the other day when we was meeting with the architects and for the Life Resource Center in the state hospital, and they says, well, what kind of bonding are you going to use? What kind of do? We said, no, we're going to pay cash. They about fell out of their chair because most states don't do that. But we put it in an envelope. Money comes in, we put it in an envelope, we had it saved, and we pay cash, and that's what we want to continue to do. So I do encourage you to vote against this.
Thank you. Any other members? Any other members? We're on third reading amendment number 5. Amendment number 5, Madam Minority Floor Leader Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment. I don't like SIPA, to tell you the truth at this point. I just don't. I know. I was here when it was established. It had certain goals to it. Over time, those goals, if you want to call it, have changed. It occasionally gets used for capital construction, like we just heard about. On other occasions, it gets used for X, Y, and Z. We have a capital construction bill. I don't like SIPA, right? That being said, I don't like this amendment even more. I think what this amendment does is it simply moves the SIPA account into another account, and without having parameters on that either, or parameters that are defined well enough or that we have vetted and agreed to. So I think that this is a serious issue about the kinds of the accounts we have and the parameters that we put on them, and how we have transparency, both for this body as well as our constituents. But this amendment is not it. This amendment doesn't meet any of those goals in my mind. So on and against.
Thank you. Any other member? First time. First time. Any other member? First time. Second time. Second time. Second time. To the sponsor, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So responding to the individual 2 speakers ago from District 54, it would be perfectly fine to appropriate out of this account for projects, but it does not make sense to have a predetermined amount for discretionary projects when we're in a period of deficit. And I'm not sure it ever really made sense, but I would say it definitely doesn't make sense now. And after all the flows come out of there, you end with a balance, and I can guarantee you that balance is going to be spent for discretionary projects. And that does not make sense. Responding to the speaker, the minority floor leader, or the speaker from District 13, I think it's great that she doesn't like SIPA too, and I hope there's some area for agreement. Maybe I can convince you here in the next minute, but look, afterwards we get rid of SIPA. We can talk about where this flow is going to go to, but let's get rid of it in this session, and then have the conversation. And ultimately, it's within the sub account within LISRA, and it can be appropriated in future sessions. But I think having this earmarked amount after distributions come out of SIPA, this earmarked amount for discretionary projects is really harmful to the fiscal position of our state. It's not good policy. And by the way, this does get rid of an account. Does get rid of an account. And you know, it's good to have multiple accounts if it's clear what those accounts are doing. And if those accounts are thrusting us towards a purpose that makes sense with where our fiscal position is right now. And I would say that to have a separate account for discretionary projects does not make sense. So responding to the member from District 54, look, whether we have more or less accounts, I mean, oftentimes that tagline is thrown about. What's important is that the accounts are for a purpose that advances our state in the way we want it to be advanced. And again, this does not do that with where our fiscal position is right now. So I urge an aye vote on this amendment. We can continue the conversation, but for now, I think it doesn't make sense to have an earmarked amount for this purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we are voting on third reading, amendment number 5, Senate File 121. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The amendment is not adopted. There is a 6th amendment. If you'll have to probably refresh your amendment page. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move third reading amendment number 6. And this is Senate File 121. And members, really, so I'm with you on this policy. I am, but I want now, this just moves it all into the school foundation program. And so if this bill then is, this amendment passes and this is enacted in law, we've taken 100 million off of the 200 million deficit. And then we cut 60 million from this house. So now the deficit in school funding would be 40 million a year out of 1.5 billion. That's a rounding error. So, I mean, if we're in this, so I agree with the policy, bro. I'm just trying to, but let's send our message and hey, we're going to solve this problem. And we can solve it with this. So I'm not bringing this to damage the bill or be flippant. I'm trying to advance the policy. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any member, first time, 3006. First time, members, we are voting on third reading amendment number 6, Senate File 121. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment has not been adopted. Senate File 121, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt,
No.
Clausen, Clifford, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner,
No.
Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hunt, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, McGuire, Martinez, Nyman excused, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters,
Aye.
Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer, Mr. Speaker, Summers, Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Zawanitzer, aye to no. Further changes, Henderson, aye to no. Further changes, closing vote. The vote is closed. 41 aye, 18 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 121, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 121 has passed the House. Next, Senate File 122.
Senate File 122, sponsored by Senator Boner. Wyoming Agriculture Authority, an act relating to agriculture and livestock being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Senate File 122, having read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
No.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
No.
Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman excused. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters.
No.
Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Clifford, no to aye. Ottman, no to aye. Further changes? O'Hearn, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 29 aye, 30 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 122, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 122 has failed to pass the House. Next Senate File for consideration is Senate File 127.
Senate File 127, sponsored by Senator Kinsky. Wyoming Learn While You Earn program, an act relating to education being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We do have an amendment. Chairman Harshman.
Got a little shock in the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill Senate File 127. Members, this is all about line item veto. So after, and I really appreciate we had strong support for the amendment, it's going, but my spidey senses started tingling a little bit because we keep the 1 million in there for the earn while you learn. And that's not, I just moved that to LSRA because as we get new state funds in the next few months, because they will be state funds, many of those, that movement will be through that LSRA. Be a great place to have that for those new state funds. And so that part, Mr. Speaker, and then in the Wyoming Samaro part you adopted, it has some, there's no money in it, but it talks about funds continuously appropriated. Just took the bill language. And this amendment proposes to take that out because with the 1 million for Learn While You Earn, and then that continuously appropriation, I don't want to open the door to any line item veto. That's it. Because if we pass this policy, You know, because the line item veto, you can literally take a letter off and change the word, or take two letters out of the middle of a word and change, make a new word. And so, not that my spidey senses were totally tingling, but I just want to make sure that it's our policy on this deal. So stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any member first time, member first time going. So members, we're voting on third reading, amendment number 1, Senate File 27. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. Senate File 127 having been in 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt,
Aye.
Clausen, Clifford, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner,
No.
Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hunt, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, McGuire, Martinez, Nyman excused, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters,
Aye.
Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Burt, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 41 aye, 18 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 127, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 127 has passed the House. Next Senate File 141.
Senate File 141, sponsored by Senator Perkins. Business entities, representation of detainer cases, an act relating to civil procedure being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We do have an amendment. No, we don't.
Not on that one.
No? Okay. Senate File 141, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt,
Aye.
Clausen, Clifford, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner,
Aye.
Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hunt, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, McGuire, Martinez, Nyman excused, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters,
Aye.
Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer, Mr. Speaker, Stith. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. Okay, Palanan, no to I. Correct? No to I. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 44 I, 15 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 141, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 141 is passed the House. Next, Senate File 152.
Senate File 152, sponsored by Senator Dockstader. Connection of utility services, an act relating to cities, towns, and counties being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have 2 amendments. The first one is a delete, so we'll start with number 2, Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will make this brief, but this amendment preserves choice for consumers, ensuring that both individuals and businesses have access to all forms of energy utility types that may come available in the future. So for example, if I wanted to open a resort or a hotel in the northwest corner of the state, I could choose to use geothermal to hook up, and there would be no limitation from local government in my ability to do that. So I ask you for your favorable consideration. I don't know if I moved the amendment.
Would you please move the
So I
amendment?
will move the second reading amendment to Senate File 152. Thank you.
Discussion on the amendment. Representative Ayer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You can vote for or against this amendment. Doesn't really make a lot of difference. I don't believe any alternate form of energy to be used in a home would have to be converted to electricity. And the bill already contains the electricity option. So either way on the amendment's fine.
Chairman Zwanitzer, first time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pretty much the same sentiment, although I suppose you could have geothermal heat, but otherwise electricity, we talked about in committee, it could cover solar, wind, any kind of electrical generation, but I mean, I don't think it does amazing wonders for the bill, but it's not worth fighting probably. So vote your conscience.
Any other members ambivalent on the amendment? Any other members? Any other members? First time, Madam, no. First time, members, we are voting on third reading amendment number 2, Senate File 152. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Ambivalence was not, amendment has not been adopted. Madam Minority Floor Leader, next amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 1 to what? To Senate File 152, and I will remove it at the appropriate time. Friends, I just want us to take a good look at what this bill does. And I'm just surprised that we haven't really had this debate, because all it does is tell our cities or towns or counties what they cannot do. The whole bill is no city or town shall enact or implement any ordinance or policy that prohibits or has the effect of prohibiting an infrastructure decision. That just really surprises me that we as a body are telling our local communities what they can do or what they can't do. So could you imagine if we flipped it and said that no city or town shall enact or implement any ordinance that encourages, right? I think we would all be very, very unhappy about that in our statutes. It's not our job to be telling our kind of local elected bodies what they should be doing regarding infrastructure. And so I would encourage us to think twice about passing a bill that prohibits our local elected bodies from doing their job, or honestly, from encouraging them, right? That's not our job. So on and in favor of the amendment and against the bill.
Representative Larson Lloyd, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And on and against the amendment, of course, and for the bill, we absolutely determine what cities do with infrastructure. We determine this, the type of pipe they can use for sewer. We determine the depth of pipe for utilities. We determine, I mean, the list goes on and on. And as there was a time when before natural gas was available that and propane was there, that when they made the switch, there was a lot of damages done because the right fittings weren't on natural gas appliances compared to propane, and the state come in and required those changes. We do this on a regular basis for the safety and the well-being of the people and for the environment as well. We do that. We don't let them run storm sewers or regular sewage off to in an area that does so. So let's discount that comment. And then I think saying that that you can't put a restriction on a utility that will deliver power or heat to a community is sound policy. And so I'd encourage an aye vote on the bill.
All right, thank you, members. Any other member? We're on Representative Ayer. We're on the amendment. Representative Ayer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe this is our last bill of the day. I think we ought to finish strong here and just let it be. It's a good bill. Vote aye on the bill, against the amendment.
Any other member on the amendment? Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, in favor of the bill, ladies and gentlemen. What our job as legislators, our job is to make sure that cities comply with what the powers that we give them. And when they abuse those powers, we need to take action for it. And that's exactly what this is. And it protects property right owners. And it's a good bill. So on in favor.
Any other member? Any other member? First time? We're on first time. First time, second time, second time to the sponsor. Madam Minority Floor Leader, bring it in.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, problems and solutions. This isn't a problem. It just isn't. There's no need for us to be putting a prohibition on local entities about what they can and can't be doing when there isn't a problem. So I would urge us to let the amendment be and vote against the bill.
All right, members, we are
Sorry,
voting.
Mr. Speaker, officially I withdraw the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Minority Floor Leader. Members, Senate File 152 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt,
Aye.
Clausen, Clifford, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Ayer, Flitner, Fortner,
Aye.
Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hunt, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan. Repeat, please. McGuire, Martinez, Nyman excused, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters,
Aye.
Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawannitzer. Mr. Speaker. Zawannitzer, confirm. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Clausen. Closing vote. Vote is closed. 50 aye, 9 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 152, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 152 has passed the House. Members, we're at that order of business of reconsideration of bills. Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Having voted on the prevailing side of House Bill 122, I move to reconsider the third reading vote on House Bill 122. Script says House Bill, Senate File 122.
All right, members, so as you recall, this is 2 votes. The first vote is whether you agree with the motion to reconsider House Bill 122. So if you vote aye, we will take another vote on House Bill 122. If you vote no, you're saying you're done dealing with House Bill 122. So any question on the motion? Any question on what we're voting on? The reconsideration of House Bill 122, Senate File 122. Senate File. All right, Chief Clerk, please call the roll on the motion to reconsider. Again, this is just a motion to reconsider. If you're voting aye, you're willing to reconsider it. If you vote no, you are not. If you vote aye and the ayes have it, and it's not a majority of the electors and members elected, it's a majority of the quorum, then we'll go to a second vote if it's an aye.
Ready?
Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt,
No.
Clausen, Clifford, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner,
No.
Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hunt, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, McGuire, Martinez, Nyman excused, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters,
No.
Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawannitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 26 aye, 33 no, 1 excused.
As the roll did not succeed, there will be no further action on House Bill on Senate File 122. We're at that order of business of the signing of enrolled acts. Members, as the chief clerk is preparing for some of these final pieces of business that we're going to do today, there's an encouragement that those that aren't coming back or may not be coming back, please clean out all the bills out of your side drawers and clean off the tops of your desks and your baskets on top, your 3 cartons. You can leave things in your pencil drawers. You can leave things on your bookcases behind you, but clean out. Now, food, remove all food. Remove all food, including there's some nice chocolates in and clean out, and there's some nice chocolates. I shouldn't have said that, should I? In your mailboxes. Those of you that I didn't already take yours, the rest of you have some left. So all food leaves, and then clean out the drawers for your bill drawers and clean out the tops of your dress. Thank you. So let's keep it to a dull roar. You can start making toward preparing for the day, but let's keep the noise down. We'll get some more business done. We're at that order of business of signing of enrolled acts. The first enrolled act is 47.
Senate Enrolled Act 47, being original bill or original Senate File 83. An act relating to community college districts, approving the formation of the Gillette Community College District, providing legislative findings, specifying requirements of the transition to the new district, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 47, being original Senate File 83. I have so signed. Go Pronghorns. Next enrolled act is 48.
Senate Enrolled Act 48, being original Senate File 102. An act relating to cooperative utilities, specifying how unclaimed refunds due members of cooperative utilities shall be used if unclaimed, making conforming amendments and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 48, being original Senate File 102. I have so signed. Next enrolled act 49.
Senate Enrolled Act 49, being original Senate File 136. An act relating to public utilities, authorizing the Public Service Commission to consider reliability and cost externalities and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 49, being original Senate File 136. I have so signed. Next enrolled act 50.
Senate Enrolled Act 50, being original Senate File 96. An act relating to crimes and offenses, creating new offenses for first and second degree murder, providing for a definition, providing penalties, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 50, being original Senate File 96. I have so signed. Next enrolled act 51.
Senate Enrolled Act 51, being original Senate File 78. An act relating to real estate appraisers, amending continuing education hours requirements, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 51, being original Senate File 78. I have so signed. Next enrolled act 52.
Senate Enrolled Act 52, being original Senate File 126. An act relating to planning and zoning, amending minimum requirements for easements for real estate subdivisions as specified, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 52, being original Senate File 126. I have so signed. Next enrolled act 53.
Senate Enrolled Act 53, being original Senate File 139. An act relating to community-based in-home services, subjecting availability of the community-based in-home services program to the availability of funds, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 53, being original Senate File 139. I have so signed. Next enrolled act 54.
Senate Enrolled Act 54, being original Senate File 114. An act relating to the state lands, specifying the preference for leases of state lands, providing for auction if two or more applicants have a preference, conforming to the related provision, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 54, being original Senate File 114. I have so signed. Next enrolled act 55.
Senate Enrolled Act 55, being original Senate File 111. An act relating to the University of Wyoming, requiring the School of Energy Resources of the University of Wyoming to submit its biennial budget independently of the University of Wyoming, making conforming amendments, specifying applicability, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 55, being original Senate File 111. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 56.
Senate Enrolled Act 56, being original Senate File 66. An act relating to wills, decedents, estates, and probate code, specifying that taking the life of another precludes rights of survivorship and payable on death benefits, specifying the order in which benefits accrue as between the deceased and the person who caused the death, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 56, being original Senate File 66. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 57.
Senate Enrolled Act 57, being original Senate File 19. An act relating to public health and safety, specifying the assumption of risk for exposure to or contracting COVID-19, defining terms related to the assumption of risk for COVID-19, amending provisions relating to immunity from civil liability for actions and omissions during the public health emergency declared for COVID-19, amending time period for which the workers' compensation program covers COVID-19 infections, specifying applicability and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 57, being original Senate File 19. We'll stand at ease for just a moment, members. Just stand at ease for a moment. Not that you aren't already doing that, but stand at ease. All right, we'll come back to order, members. We'll continue signing bills, and we're going to do one joint conference committee report on House Bill 22. All right, next Enrolled Act is 58.
Senate Enrolled Act 58, being original Senate File 2. An act relating to K-12 school facilities, amending provisions governing school facility adequacy standards, amending provisions governing school facility needs assessments, amending provisions and governing the prioritization of remedies for school facilities by the School Facilities Commission, conforming provisions and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 58, being an original Senate File 2. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act, Senate Joint Resolution Number 1.
Senate Enrolled Joint Resolution 1, being original Senate Joint Resolution 3. A joint resolution requesting Congress and the federal government to reverse federal orders and actions that inhibit the safe development of oil and gas in Wyoming and that negatively and disproportionately impact Wyoming citizens and industries, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Joint Resolution Number 1, being original Senate Joint Number 3. I have so signed. Next enrolled act is 59, Senate.
Senate Enrolled Act 59, being original Senate File 25, an act relating to crimes and offenses, amending enforcement provisions, providing for the possession and care of impounded animals as a result of charges, amending provisions relating to the cost of disposition of impounded animals, providing alternative processes as specified, providing for an expedited court hearing, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 59, being original Senate File 25. I have so signed.
There's four more.
Next enrolled act is 60.
Senate Enrolled Act 60, being original Senate File 58, an act relating to administration of the government, providing funds for the Wyoming Investment in Nursing Program from CARES Act funds, providing for appropriations, providing for a sunset date, providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 60, being original Senate File 58. I have so signed. Next enrolled act 61.
Senate Enrolled Act 61, being original Senate File 34, an act relating to public health and safety, requiring the commonly accepted means of care to be employed in the treatment of any infant born alive, imposing duties on physicians performing abortions, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 61, being original Senate File 34. I have so signed. Next enrolled act 62.
Senate Enrolled Act 62, being original Senate File 28. An act relating to motor vehicles, modifying requirements for perfection of a security interest, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 62, being original Senate File 28. I have so signed. Next enrolled act 63.
Senate Enrolled Act 63, being original Senate File 15. An act relating to professions and occupations, authorizing licensing and permitting boards to waive or modify statutory requirements as specified, limiting the duration of waivers and modifications, creating reporting requirements, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 63, being original Senate File 15. I have so signed. All right, members, so we're going to do another roll call because we're going to have a joint conference committee. So members, if you're out around, let's come back to your seats, come back to order. Chief Clerk just needs a moment, Chairman Greer, to get things in order, and then we'll do that joint conference. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, privilege of the floor.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And remember, we got a little form to fill out from the Secretary of State. If you haven't done that, please do that. And if you want to, and turn it into the office, the LSO office, and they'll take care of it. Thank you.
We can go ahead and do it, can't we? All right, members, we're at that order of business of consideration. We're at that order of business, consideration of joint conference committee reports. I think we have one we're going to take care of today, is message 324 on Senate File 22. Chairman Greer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move joint conference report for House Bill 22 and will ask for an aye vote. We met with the like body from the other chamber. If you recall, maybe you don't, this was an issue dealing with the jurisdiction or where the attorneys were authorized to practice. And this body felt that they had to have some tie to the state of Wyoming, or they could also be part of the military judge advocate, which is acceptable. And what came over, what was amended in by the Senate was they could be licensed or licensed to practice in any court in the United States. So the other conference committee member from House District 55 raised some really good points on our behalf in terms of saying, hey, if you're practicing law in Wyoming, first of all, military court, it has its own set of rules and all of that. Typically, you're appointed a judge from the JAG Corps. But if you hire a private counsel, okay, that counsel's practicing in the state of Wyoming. Okay, it is a state court. That's why we did this in state law. And you should still be subject to oversight by the Wyoming Bar. So that's your ethics, and that's all the consumer protection that goes along with practicing being an attorney. So what we did was a great compromise language, and we simply said that counsel shall be authorized to practice law in Wyoming, and then a member in good standing in any other court or jurisdiction within the United States or part of the JAG Corps. What that means is if you are from Colorado and you're not licensed in Wyoming, you simply can get admitted, just a simple motion to get admitted, to be authorized, and you're submitting to the jurisdiction oversight of the state of Wyoming. So good help. I appreciate the help from my committee, and would ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Any discussion on the Joint Conference Committee? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none. So members, we are voting on Joint Conference Committee number 1, report 2, and it's House Bill 22. A majority of the elected members required to adopt the report. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
Aye.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air.
I got the report.
Flitner.
It's up to you. It's ready.
Fortner.
Aye.
Gray. Greer.
Yeah.
Hallinan.
Are you ready to explain what you did?
Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner.
We have to explain what you did.
Kenner. Knapp.
Well, you need to move.
Larson Lloyd.
You need to move the amendment.
Larson Dan.
So it's
McGuire.
347 message,
Martinez.
message,
Nyman excused. Newsom.
Senate.
Nicholas. Oakley.
547.
Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters.
Aye.
Washit. Western. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yen. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker.
Aye.
Kenner.
Excused.
Excused. Western. Excused. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Connolly, aye to no. Clifford, aye to no. Sweeney? Correct? Sweeney? Martinez? Yin? Aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote? Vote is closed. 50 aye, 7 no, 3 excused.
By your vote, you have adopted Joint Conference Committee number 1 report on House Bill 22. We're going to do another joint conference committee. It'd be on message 347, Senate File 87. Chairman Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move message 347, Senate File 87. And when we went down to the Senate, the other body down the hall, they preferred and really liked what the version of the bill for voyeurism that came out of Judiciary Committee from the House side. They appreciated the extra work that happened. They liked the version that came and hit the floor. And so they took it and they went back to the original version. So basically, we made the body down the hall roll over to the House version. So I very highly encourage you to do an aye vote on concurrence.
Discussion, Representative Stiff.
Mr.
On the
Speaker.
message.
Mr. Speaker, I encourage and ask you for a no vote on this. The House position was not maintained. What happened was we had taken out the lines 14 through 16 on page 2 regarding looking underneath someone's clothing. Okay, so this is my third time. I would say hats off to the conference committee, but this is my third time here. So I guess that makes this a hat trick. If you are wearing a hat, okay, that is an article of clothing. And if you are at your annual conference on industrial espionage and you're having lunch with somebody and you're staring at some blemish on their forehead, right? And they ask if you think there's a mole in the organization, and then they ask you to pass the guacamole, right? And you're staring at them, you are committing the crime of voyeurism. So this is, I think this conference report is all hat and no cattle. And it's a three-legged cat in a hat. Please vote no. Free the conference committee. Vote no.
Members, any other member for their first time? Any other member for their first time? Representative Washut, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd encourage an aye vote. You know, there is a process known as prosecutorial discretion. Prosecutors will make fine judgments. They're not going to be prosecuting people for staring at moles. A vote aye.
Any other members, first time? Any other members, first time? First time, second time? All right, members, so this is another vote. And at the end, the chief clerk's going to look for change of votes. So please be sitting or outside the bar. So members, we're voting on message 347, Senate File 87. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
No.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
No.
Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner excused. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman excused. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters.
No.
Washut. Western. Excused. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote, are there any changes? Bear, aye to no. Blackburn? Olson? Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 39 aye, 18 no, 3 excused.
By your vote, you have adopted Joint Conference Committee number 1 report on to Senate File 87. So members, there's 3 concurrences you've received an email on from the chief clerk at 2 o'clock today, but we're not going to do those now. There's going to be discussion on those, so I think we'll wait on those. All right, we're going to finish out as much as we can today. Well, except for those concurrences with enrolled acts. So again, keep it to a dull roar and we'll continue with some rolled acts. Next enrolled act for our consideration is 78. Reading clerk.
Which one?
What do you want, Senate? House Bill 239 being enrolled Act 78.
House Enrolled Act 78 being original House Bill 239, an act relating to workers' compensation, providing for student learner agreements between eligible students, school districts, community colleges or technical schools, and employers, providing for the coverage of student learners under workers' compensation, specifying premiums and rates for employees to pay for covered student learners, specifying duties for the Department of Workforce Services for student learners, and student learner agreements, authorizing school districts, community colleges, and technical schools to enter into student learner agreements, requiring rulemaking and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign enrolled Act 78 being original House Bill 239. I have so signed. Next enrolled Act 79.
House Enrolled Act 79 being original House Bill 187, an act relating to elected officials, prescribing residency requirements for county officers, prescribing when a vacancy in office occurs, providing accountability, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign enrolled Act 79 being original House Bill 187. Congratulations, Representative Hunt. The one previous that was Representative Greer. Next to enroll Joint Resolution 4.
Enrolled Joint Resolution 4 being original House Joint Resolution 13, a joint resolution in support of Taiwan, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign enrolled Joint Resolution number 4 being original House Joint Resolution 13. I have so signed. Congratulations, Chairman Hunt, or Chairman Nicholas. Next enrolled Act 64, Senate.
Senate Enrolled Act 64 being original Senate File 112, an act relating to motor vehicle insurance, removing the requirement for the insurer to allow and for the Motor Vehicle Division of the Department of Transportation to approve accident prevention training in order for the insured person to be eligible for an insurance discount after completing the training, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign enrolled Act 64 being original Senate File 112. I have so signed. Next enrolled Act 65.
Senate Enrolled Act 65 being original Senate File 76, an act relating to the Broadband Development Program, creating requirements for providing funding for middle mile broadband projects, defining terms, amending minimum speed requirements for projects funded under the program, specifying eligible applicants for funding, amending rulemaking authority and requirements for the program, amending application contents, providing for the confidentiality of certain application materials, amending procedures for the challenge process, specifying additional funding priorities, amending and repealing limitations on funding projects, repealing rulemaking requirements for the broadband speeds, requiring rulemaking, specifying applicability, and providing for ineffective dates being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 65, being original Senate File 76. I have so signed. Messages from the Senate.
Message number 402, Mr. Speaker, House Bill 36, Management Council Membership. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form is followed by the vote indicated. Ayes 27, noes 2, excused 1. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk. Message 403, Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 156, alcoholic beverage permits. Ayes 27, noes 2, excused 1. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk. Message number 404. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 190, vehicle titles for non-resident owners. Ayes 29, excused 1. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk. Message 405. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 244, State Investment Administration. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 24, noes 5, excused 1. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk. Message 406. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 254, Transportation Computer System. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 25, noes 4, excused 1. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk. Message 407. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Joint 11, State Sovereignty Impacted by Federal Actions. Ayes 26, noes 3, excused 1. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk. Message 408. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below failed to pass the Senate third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 135, Hank Cole Leadership Highway Designation. Ayes 12, noes 17, excused 1. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House adjourn until 10 a.m. Tuesday, the 6th day of April, 2021.
All right, man, any messages, any announcements? Any announcements? All right. Any announcements? Any announcements? Seeing none. All right, members. Just a reminder that if you should have if you're not going to be attending in person, you should have a Zoom link available to you on your calendars. that is good for the entire session. So you should be able to click it any day during the session. And it should pull you up on Tuesday. So any other business for the good of the order? Any other business for the good of the order? I wish you a safe holiday weekend, safe travels, have a blessed time. Members, we're voting on whether we should adjourn until April 6th, which will be our 33rd day of the 66th Wyoming Legislature. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, no. We are adjourned until 10 a.m. Tuesday, April 6th.